Coming up on Network Africa. 2 people killed and 77 others injured after a massive explosion rocks Ibadan, Oyo State in southwest Nigeria. 3 people killed in a suicide bombing in Mogadishu, Somalia. Plus, Mauritius and Réunion clean up after devastating Cyclone damage. Hello and welcome to the program today. I'm Layo Olarinde. We begin here in Nigeria. Rescue efforts continue in Oyo State after a devastating explosion rocked the capital city, Ibadan, on Tuesday night. Well, following the incident that shook the Bodija area and its environs, the governor, Seyi Makinde, is appealing for calm among residents. The governor, who visited the explosion scene on Adeyi Avenue, says preliminary investigations by security agents indicate that some illegal miners in possession of explosives might have caused the unfortunate incident.
The devastation from the explosion on Adeyi Avenue, a popular but quiet residential area in Ibadan, the Oyo State capital, is massive. The force of the explosion is felt streets away as residents began settling in for the night. On these streets and on adjoining streets, some residents arrived to find their homes and vehicles partially or completely destroyed. At the ground zero on Deji Oyelese Street, the building is completely sunken. Service chiefs deploy personnel to the scene as first responders to salvage what they can.
Okay, a military man is even here.
A short while later, Governor Seyi Makinde visits the scene to see the extent of the damage and show support for the victims. Calling for calm, the governor gives details of preliminary investigations by security agents which indicate that some illegal miners stored explosive devices in one of the houses on Deji Oyelese Street.
We've seen the devastation here, and from what we've gathered so far, the likelihood is that you have illegal miners toying with explosives around this place. The affected families, I'll say, the government is here. We will support them in the recovery effort. But most importantly, at this stage, whatever information we can get, we need it. And then we'll react appropriately.
Some of the residents recount their ordeal.
I was going to say my Maghrib prayers, and I started hearing, I saw a spark of fire in the next building. So I had to rush down. Some of the guys, they are miners, so they have dynamites. So while we were outside trying to call out people, I told one of my boys to go inside and fetch my phone. I wanted to call the fire service. Shortly after then, I had this blast. The blast happened. It took me off the ground. I thought I was gone. So there was smoke everywhere. We were lazy, When I regained consciousness, I started to, trace my steps and what have you.
The number of casualties is not clear, but unconfirmed reports say maybe up to 20. Those injured have been moved to various hospitals within Ibadan.
Outside Nigeria, the UN Secretary General has condemned the killing of one Cameroonian peacekeeper from the peacekeeping mission in the Central African Republic, MINUSCA. UN spokesperson Stephen Dujarric says the death and injuries came as a result of an explosive device in Bindali in Uampendre Prefecture in the country. All 5 others were injured in the incident and were transported by air to Bua, where they are receiving medical care and are said to be in stable condition.
Peacekeepers may constitute war. As you are aware, last night we issued a statement in which the Secretary General condemned the killing that had taken place earlier yesterday of one of our Cameroonian peacekeepers from our peacekeeping force in the Central African Republic, and the wounding of 5 others. 2 of those 5 are seriously injured. The death and the injury came as a result of an explosive device in Mbindali in Uampende Prefecture in the Central African Republic, of course. We can report that the one fatality, the peacekeeper from Cameroon, was Emmanuel Steve Atebele. He was 30 years old. He was deployed in Limpende Prefecture with his unit, where he supported the peacekeeping mission's efforts to protect civilians and extend the authority of the state. He lost his life while his contingent was providing an escort for a team from the International Organization for Migration. And the 5 peacekeepers who were injured were transported by air to Bouare, where they received medical care and are currently listed as in stable condition. We, of course, extend our heartfelt condolences to the family of Mr. Atebele and his colleagues and the people and the government of Cameroon. The Secretary General recalls that attacks targeting UN peacekeepers may constitute war crimes under international law. He calls on the Central African Republic authorities to spare no efforts in identifying the perpetrators of the attack and bringing them to justice swiftly.
Well, 3 people have been killed and 2 others injured after a suicide bomber blew himself up in the Somali capital city of Mogadishu. Local media quoting police reports say that the blast targeted security officials near the city mayor's office and that the explosion damaged Banadir Regional Administration building. Well, militants from the Islamist group Al-Shabaab have reportedly claimed responsibility for the attack. Somalia has registered several bomb attacks in the last few years, with groups such as Al-Shabaab and ISIS targeting mainly military posts as well as civilian and government facilities. In the meantime, Somalia's permanent secretary of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation has rejected the possibility of negotiations with Ethiopia over the Somaliland territory. Hamza Haddo says the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Somalia is not up for negotiation, and Ethiopia should respect that. On New Year's Day, Ethiopia and Somaliland signed an agreement giving the former access ports along the latter's coast in return for recognition of Somaliland's independence. Somaliland declared independence from Somalia in 1991, but it's not recognized by any UN member state.
Negotiate, and there's something red line. So there is no negotiation at all. You know, we respect the sovereignty and territorial integrity and unity of our neighboring country of Ethiopia, and we ask the same. You know, African Union has a charter which clearly defines the rules that has been set by African leadership, which clearly indicates those principles. So we're asking to stick with that principle, and already they have shown us. So there is no negotiation. As a country, we are ready, peaceful, mutual respect for both countries. But there is something that we cannot negotiate. Our sovereignty, our unity, our territorial integrity, that's not something that we can discuss or negotiate. It is not negotiable at all.
A court in Turkey has convicted the son of Somalia's president for the death of a motorcycle courier, but commuted his sentence to 2.5 years in prison to a fine. Well, prosecutors had requested that Mohammed Hassan Sheikh Mohammed, who's the son of the Somali president, be sentenced to up to 6 years in prison. On Tuesday, the Istanbul court fined him 27,300 Turkish lira, that's about $900. Mohammed was charged with causing death by negligence after a diplomatic car he was driving hit a delivery man, Yunus Gosa, in Istanbul in November last year. Well, an arrest warrant was issued for Mohammed after Gosa died 6 days later, but the president's son had already left Turkey in December. Mohammed reportedly returned to Turkey last week to testify, denying negligence, saying that the motorbike stopped suddenly and that the crash had been unavoidable. To politics now, Comoros President Azali Assoumani has been re-elected for a fourth term in a poll that's been disputed by the opposition and termed fraudulent. The electoral body Seni said he secured the win with 63% of the vote amid a low voter turnout and opposition boycott. Well, opposition candidates allege instances of ballot stuffing in favor of Mr. Assoumani and that polls had closed early. However, Mr. Assoumani's campaign team denied the opposition's claim. Well, 6 candidates ran in the 14th January presidential election in the Indian Ocean archipelago. Also, South Africa now, the socio-political landscape is at a crossroads, according to analysts that have been describing the looming 2024 general elections as the most critical to date. Participation is expected to intensify in this year's polls, with coalitions, new entrants, and independents all vying for seats in the National Assembly. Well, our South Africa correspondent, Innocent Semosa, reports.
2024 is the moment that we've all been waiting for.
The political landscape in South Africa is evolving rapidly as we approach the 2024 general elections, with the nation grappling with many socio-economic challenges.
I believe that campaigning in 2024 could be quite challenging for all political parties given the number of challenges that the country is faced with. I believe that people are looking for pragmatic solutions to everyday challenges, and I think that political parties would obviously need to meet those challenges. I believe that campaigning for the African National Congress could be quite challenging in 2024 given that they have had 30 years to govern. I think this is more than sufficient time for people to reflect on the kind of leadership that they've seen, the ability to govern, the ability to provide service delivery, and so on. And I think that the political party obviously had a lot of potential when it initially came in, but over the years it has been overshadowed by cadre deployment. This has been overshadowed by lack of service delivery, poor governance, financial mismanagement in municipalities, amongst others.
Former President Jacob Zuma abandons the ANC and pledges to vote for MK Party. Analysts predict the move will harm the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal province.
In the bigger scheme of things, what is the meaning of this? It means that the electoral performance of the ANC will be dealt with a blow, whether you like it or not. He is popular. I mean, there have been many scientific findings that have been unveiled. I'm sure you must have seen them in different weekly newspapers or daily newspapers, confirming that he is more popular than the incumbent of the ANC. So he is popular. He is popular, in particular in KZN. That tells me that a huge chunk of electorate will not vote for the ANC, meaning that the ANC will not bounce back to power in KZN. I'm definitely sure about that.
Some say the ANC is running out of time.
No, I think if they don't learn now, it's too late for them. That's all I can say. Thank you.
So they need to learn.
If they don't learn now, how many mistakes they've done in the past and currently, and they don't reserve them with immediate effect, and then it's too late for them. That's all I can say.
We must ask ourselves this question. Is the government treating us with respect? Over the years that we've been voting, What has worked for us as citizens? The nation's societal issues are encouraging young men to make poor decisions.
The system not pushing us towards that.
With the 2024 general elections looming, the choices made by voters and the outcomes of this election will shape the future of the nation. From Johannesburg, South Africa, Innocent Samosa, Channels Television News.
Still ahead on the program. African countries seeking 2 permanent seats at the United Nations Security Council with veto rights. More details after. Please join us again. Thank you for staying with us. Mauritius has lifted its highest weather alert and eased the nationwide curfew after the deadly cyclone battered the Indian Ocean island, causing heavy flooding and an extensive damage in the country. The nearby French island of Réunion is assessing the aftermath of tropical cyclone Bilal. Officials say 2 more bodies had been found, bringing the death toll to 3. 1 person died in Mauritius. Cyclone Bilal ripped through the region off the east coast of Africa on Monday and early Tuesday. The Mauritius Meteorological Service says it is now heading further into the Indian Ocean. Meanwhile, in other developments, the head of the Meteorological Service has stepped down after his institution was accused of not giving adequate warning about the storm's impact. Well, Niger's Prime Minister Ali Zain is still in Russia, meeting with Russian Deputy Prime Minister Alexei Overchok in Moscow. Well, during the meeting, PM Zain expressed interest in developing bilateral economic and strategic cooperation between both countries. He added that the people of Niger have decided to get closer to Russia, deepen relations while respecting one another's sovereignty. According to the Russian government's press service, the delegations discussed cooperation in trade and economic investment, humanitarian and other areas of mutual interest. Prime Minister Zain arrived in Moscow on Monday, accompanied by Niger's Minister of Defense, Oil, Agriculture, Trade, Youth and Sport. 2,800 participants from 120 countries are meeting in Davos, Switzerland. And top on the agenda on Tuesday was a session which gave attention to the African Continental Free Trade Area. Nigeria's Vice President Kashim Shettima, who was a discussant on the panel, believes that global future lies in Africa, especially because of the youthful and unexplored population.
Day 2 of the World Economic Forum has a session tagged An African Economy of Scale, with a panel of the Vice President of Nigeria, Kashim Shettima, the Secretary General of the African Continental Free Trade Area after Wamkele Mene, Senior Administrator at Government Pensions Administration Agency in South Africa, Mary Vilakazi, and Executive Vice Chairman, Africa and Asia, Yara International, Lubs Larsen. Thank you. Attention here is on the African Free Trade Area and how over 1.3 billion people are connected into a single market, unlocking novel opportunities for African and global businesses in critical industries.
The products that were traded ranged from processed agricultural products to manufactured goods to services also. The lessons that we learned is that actually the private sector is ready. Governments have to move much faster, but private sector across the continent is ready to take advantage of the AfCFTA. This year, the intensified effort will be on the services sector. So tourism sector, banking sector, within the framework of this pilot, this guided trade initiative that we want to see, and the enabling tools. Mm-hmm. And I'll mention just 2 of those enabling tools. One is the Pan-African Payments and Settlement System, as I mentioned, to enable payments in local currency, to reduce the cost, to reduce the barriers to trade. And then second, soon the Ministers of Trade will conclude the protocol on digital trade, which will further enhance competitiveness of Africa's economy.
The achievement of AFTA is also of interest to the Pensions Administration Agency in South Africa.
When we look at the numbers of how much the frictional cost of trade is on the continent, because as you said, people need to access currencies that they don't trade in. I think it's about $5 billion a year, which actually could go back into the economies. And I mean, you made the point around lending. So some of the challenges that we see, and where as banks we would like to leverage more of our balance sheet for productive capital formation.
The potentials of digital revolution in Africa is the message from the Vice President of Nigeria, Mr. Kashim Shettima, and he seeks for partnership to explore the potentials.
We are the youngest continent in the world. For instance, Nigeria, the average age of the Nigerian population is 19. And this huge youth bulge, we can truly transform them into demographic dividends. I'm afraid I'm an eternal optimist. I don't want to see it as a demographic disaster that will consume all of us. Because once we wear our thinking caps as leaders, once we reach out to the global community for partnership, I believe that Africa stands poised to be a driver of change and growth in the world.
Sessions like this will continue until Friday, January the 19th, when business and country leaders will return home with knowledge and collaborations gained at the World Economic Forum of 2024 for implementation. Ini John Mekwa, Channels Television News.
Well, still on the sidelines of the World Economic Forum, Rwandan President Paul Kagame met with U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken. The meeting comes amid tensions between Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo, ongoing accusations, airspace violations, and an escalating conflict in the eastern DRC. Well, Mr. Blinken says the U.S. is committed to supporting efforts towards a peaceful resolution of differences between Rwanda and the DRC and to avoid conflict. According to Rwanda's official communications channel, sustainable peace in the region was the stated agenda at the meeting. Well, to another meeting here on the continent in Uganda, the 19th Non-Aligned Movement. The Uganda's Minister for Foreign Affairs, Henry Oreem Ekelo, is calling for African countries to become fully functional members of the UN Security Council. He was speaking on the sidelines of the summit in Kampala. According to him, the absence of Africa in the UN Security Council is a historical injustice, adding that the continent has been deliberately marginalized.
I think amongst the things we intend to do is make NAM relevant and sit on the high table with the main players. For many years, members of NAM have been sidelined, have been ignored, and have been bullied, and been intimidated, and been lectured upon by the so-called police countries of the world. I think the time has come for we are sovereign, independent countries in NAM, all of us by our own rights. I think the time is now right for us to send a very strong message that we cannot continue in the same mannerism we have done for the last 55 years after independence. We have come to age, we are capable of managing our own affairs, and we cannot be told what to do or know what to do. And we should do what is in our interest. And if there's any mistakes in those decisions, they are our own mistakes, but not mistakes of others who have lectured us on how to do or manage our affairs or not to manage our affairs.
And that's it on the program today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Layo Olarinde.